The reported friend of David, someone who was arrested, someone who allegedly testified in front of a grand jury hearing evidence in the case involving the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the man known as Neo Langston, just took to Instagram, and he had a lot to say. It was quite revealing, and he seemingly threw David under the bus. We're gonna break down what he posted and what this means. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. I gotta say I wasn't expecting this, okay? This is an interesting update in the David Celeste Rivas Hernandez case that we want to talk about, and it concerns Neo Langston. Now, if you've been following us here on Sidebar, you know this is apparently a friend of the romantic homicide singer who was arrested out in Montana back in January on a Los Angeles warrant for reportedly failing to appear as a witness, that he was reportedly arrested at his mom's house and then taken to Los Angeles's Metropolitan Detention Center. He bonded out on a $60,000 bail. He then reportedly testified in front of a grand jury hearing evidence in connection with this case back in February that he allegedly spent about 30 to 45 minutes inside that grand jury room. Relatively short amount of time to testify if you think about it. So you do wonder, did he plead the fifth, right? Did he invoke his right against self-incrimination not to say anything that can be used against him in a criminal case? And also raised a lot of questions about why he was apparently called to testify by the government and wasn't the target of this grand jury probe, right? In other words, why weren't prosecutors maybe pursuing a case against him as a co-defendant here? This raised a lot of questions. Now, I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But again, at the time of this recording, neither David nor anyone else has officially been arrested or charged in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose dismembered and decomposed body was found in the trunk of a car allegedly registered to David back in September in LA. And yes, there has been a lot of speculation, but no confirmation that Celeste and David were in some kind of relationship. Authorities haven't officially come out and said that. But she had been missing for quite some time before her body was found. Now, here's what I'm gonna do, okay? I'm gonna read you what Neo Langston just posted on his Instagram account. And I will tell you, it's quite telling, okay? And I'm curious why he posted it, why of all times right now. I'm gonna try to put it into context a bit more, but this is important. This is a big development. So Neo took to Instagram with a series of posts. There was one that said, "I understand due to my silence and the silence in general, it leaves a void of information that everyone wants to fill. But at the end of the day, this case isn't about me. It isn't about you. It's about getting justice for the victim and her family, and I care a lot more about that than trying to fill that void because of public opinion. Obviously wasn't doing my part at first, but now I am. I've stayed loyal to my mindset and I will continue to. I'm not publicly going to give any opinion or emotion about this case because I find it disrespectful and not my place to weigh in on it, especially as it's still ongoing. I'm not going to spam post to justify and perform my feelings and thoughts for the internet, trying to satisfy people who have already made up their minds about me. In time, the record will speak for itself, and I'm moving on with my life." There's another post where he apparently said, "I think the worst part is that I've told so many people that I trust and I thought knew me as a person, my side of things, all for that to be thrown out the window as soon as I get arrested and they slap that bleep's name next to mine." I'm assuming he's referring to David here. "And for the record, the thing I was arrested for, I wasn't even charged. They never filed it, and my warrant was retracted because there is more to the story than what's on the news." Then there's this post. "Thankfully, I'm legally fine in every way, and boy, do I got all my receipts for things. Ha 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 ha." This raises a lot of questions about why he posted this. Obviously, he can't and will not say anything to jeopardize his legal rights, right? Probably instructed by the government to not say anything either if he had spoken in front of the grand jury. Probably his attorney said, don't say anything. I don't even know if his attorney was consulted with this post, but it seems like he's trying to correct whatever misconception or misunderstanding the public has on him or his alleged role in this, because there is a lot of talk about him. And it is interesting, he never really gets into specifics, right? He doesn't mention the crime or the alleged crime, doesn't mention Celeste by name, doesn't mention David by name. We can assume who he's talking about based on the post. He doesn't mention what these receipts are or what this is in reference to. Is it photos? Is it messages? His account, his testimony? And I don't know if these other people that he's referring to, who he's putting blame, are other witnesses who named him or people in his inner circle who have turned on him. Not entirely sure. But he believes that in due time, based on this post, that his side of the story is going to make the light of day. Interesting. I gotta say this real quick. We cover a lot of concerning things here on Sidebar, so that's why I just want to give a quick shout out to our partner CyberGhost VPN, because have you ever hesitated to connect to public Wi-Fi like in a restaurant, airport, work, school, because you're scared that someone might steal your information? It's totally valid. The truth is, eyes are watching you every time you go online, but there's a solution. CyberGhost VPN. You select one of their hundreds of locations before you browse, and they'll encrypt everything through their secure servers. This way, no one can track your online activity. It works on up to 7 devices at once, so you can share with family and friends. And with just a couple clicks, CyberGhost unlocks exclusive geo-restricted content from over 40 major streamers like Netflix and Prime. And with over 38 million users worldwide and a nearly perfect rating on Trustpilot, CyberGhost, it's one of the most recommended VPNs out there. And look, if you're still not sure, there's a 45-day money-back guarantee and 84% discount plus 4 months free with a link in my description. That's just $2.03 a month to protect your privacy and enjoy unlimited content. Not bad. So don't wait. Click the link in the description. Start browsing safely with CyberGhost VPN. Stay private, stay secure, unlock global content. Get CyberGhost VPN now with 84% off plus 4 months free, risk-free with a 45-day money-back guarantee. Click the link in the description and start protecting your digital life today. Now, his attorney released the statement. And this read, this is according to LA Magazine, "My client, Mr. Langston, will not make any public statement at this time as the investigation is ongoing. What I can share is that since returning to Los Angeles, Mr. Langston has fully cooperated with law enforcement and will continue to assist the prosecution as needed." So this makes me think that maybe he didn't plead the fifth. "As the investigation continues, it will become clear that Mr. Langston played no part in this heinous crime and that he was and continues to be wrongfully persecuted in the court of public opinion, resulting in unwarranted and belligerent harassment directed towards my client and his family." So this suggests that there might be a lot that we're not seeing about maybe messages or threats that he and his family are receiving. "We sincerely hope that justice is ultimately served for the victim and her family," seemingly Celeste. Do you know who reacted to this? I think you probably have an idea if you've been following us here on Sidebar. Private investigator Steve Fisher, who has been very vocal about this case, both here on Sidebar, on my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, on social media, because as somebody who has been investigating this case from the beginning, remember, he represents the owner of the property where David had apparently been staying in Los Angeles, near where that Tesla was ultimately found. He is very disappointed there have not been arrests yet. And he believes, and he has, again, been very vocal about this, that he believes others are involved in some way. So he wrote this in response to Neo's post. Quote, "So here's the thing, Neo. If you have to tell my side of things, that means you were involved in the things. You just want everyone to believe you did less of the things. People who weren't involved don't have a my side of things. And how tone deaf are you exactly? Your Weep For Me post has 11 references to you and not a single mention of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who is dead. She's dead because of the things you're trying to explain away. Nobody cares about your feelings, Neo. This is about Celeste and justice in her name. Hashtag Neo the Asian, hashtag David." Okay, now as I mentioned, Steve has been quite vocal about Neo. This, by the way, is just to give you an example, is from a previous episode of Sidebar when I talked to Steve, and this is when he referenced Neo's arrest. This is what you said in part, "The arrest of Neil Langston for failure to appear to give testimony," which are the exact words used by the Sheriff's Department when speaking with me, "concerns me to a certain extent, assuming this arrest is related to the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. Targets are not typically called to testify in a case. At the state level, target letters are not always required, but issuing a subpoena to a target without providing notice is extremely risky. A defense attorney would likely argue that any testimony was coerced. Had Neo received a target letter, he almost certainly would have retained counsel and invoked his Fifth Amendment rights. That makes me think that he is viewed as a witness rather than someone currently at risk of being charged. Did one person act alone in concealing Celeste's body? If this was a homicide, did a single individual act alone without a conspirator? I find that unlikely. This leads me to believe that Neo may represent a last-ditch effort by prosecutors, a Hail Mary of sorts, because they do not yet have what they need to fully make the case. They may be attempting to pressure him into cooperating, potentially by offering immunity. Is Neo the last hope?" So Steve, just to break that down for a second, I hear exactly what you're saying. In other words, there's a possibility here that Neo may be involved in what happened to Celeste, and bringing him in strictly as a witness as opposed to somebody that the grand jury can issue an indictment against. I could hear your concern. Something I mentioned on my show, and I'll mention with you again, is there is always the possibility that, assuming for a moment that Neo and David are connected to this, he could be testifying testifying against David. He could be testifying against David and another individual or another individual. There could be people, Neo might just have knowledge of something and not actually be a part of whatever happened to Celeste, right? That's still a possibility.
Absolutely, it is. But there is more. I think I'm looking at this whole situation a little bit broader than just the homicide. I understand the homicide is what we're looking for, but Celeste was trafficked, and listen, there's messages back and forth. They knew her age, and so it's not just that. Listen, there's sex crimes against this girl, and there's certain people that knew what was going on. There's certain people that gave rides to her back and forth, even to Lake Elsinore, and so it's not just the homicide for me. I just think that this is one of these things where we got to start standing up for these young girls that are just taken advantage of by these predators. And I hope it's not a situation where it's like, we can't make the homicide, we just can't get there with it and let it go, because there is other crimes, whether it's concealment of the body, whether it's anybody that helped in facilitating her to stay with David. And so it's not just the homicide, it's just everything that happened to Celeste. It's the whole breakdown.
So it is interesting for Neo to post this and think about what he may be testified to and what his alleged role is in all of this, and why the government seemingly needs him as that kind of connective tissue, right, to get to David. I mean, that seems to be the argument here. And this is especially important considering the biggest update we had in this case on our previous sidebar, how could we forget this, that there was official court paperwork that was filed seemingly confirming there is an active criminal investigation case against David for murder. Remember, actually, it was Steve who was the one who posted this information, and then we got our hands on the court paperwork. But Steve posted, in a petition for attendance to compel David's family members to appear before a grand jury, it's disclosed that Celeste Rivas Hernandez's head and torso were found in a cadaver bag, her severed arms and legs in a second bag. David Burke is the target of the grand jury for one count of murder. And when you read from the screenshots, and again, we have the filings from this, it said the people of the state of California v. David Burke, Nathan Hochman at the top, he's the Los Angeles County District Attorney, Beth Silverman too, who we believe is the attorney prosecuting this case. So confirming, again, this is a real case. They're the prosecutors. There was even video or pictures of her coming in and out of court. It goes on to say that there is now pending in the Superior Court of the County of Los Angeles the above entitled grand jury investigation by the state of California against target David Burke. David, that's his real name, David, wherein target may be involved in having committed the following criminal offenses against the laws of the state of California, to wit, one count of murder. And when I looked up the penal code that was allegedly broken here, murder is the unlawful killing of a human being or a fetus with malice aforethought, basically an intentional killing. The filing goes on to say, on September 8th, 2025, at approximately 10:30 hours, Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD detectives received a phone call from the manager of Hollywood Area Official Police Garage. The manager stated a black Tesla Model X had been impounded as an abandoned vehicle by the Department of Transportation on September 5th, 2025. The manager told police there was a strong smell of decay coming from the vehicle, which was attracting flies. LAPD detectives responded to the Hollywood tow yard to investigate. Detectives approached the vehicle, which was parked on the upper deck of the impound lot, and immediately noticed the smell of decaying biological material consistent with a decomposing corpse coming from the front storage compartment of the vehicle. Detectives obtained a search warrant for the vehicle, and when the front storage compartment was opened, detectives observed a black cadaver bag covered with insects and a strong odor of decay. Utilizing black latex gloves, detectives partially unzipped the bag and observed a decomposed head and torso. Investigators and criminalists from the Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner responded to the tow yard to process the decomposed body. Upon removing the cadaver bag from the front storage compartment, it was discovered the arms and legs had been severed from the body. A second black bag was discovered underneath the cadaver bag. Upon opening the second bag, the dismembered body parts were discovered. Detectives were advised that on August 26, 2025, a citizen reported the above-mentioned Tesla as an abandoned vehicle parked across from. On August 27, 2025, Department of Transportation officers responded to and marked the vehicle. On September 3, 2025, Department of Transportation returned to the vehicle and issued a citation. On September 5, 2025, Department of Transportation impounded the vehicle to Hollywood Area Tow. It was noted the Tesla was registered to target David Anthony Burke in Hempstead, Texas. David, who is a singer and performing artist, was on tour at the time his vehicle was impounded. And Steve Fisher, in an X post at the time, talked about his frustrations, talked about Neo. Quote, Celeste Rivas-Hernandez deserves better. It's infuriating that we're approaching 6 months and no charges have been filed in her murder. If the evidence hasn't been secured by now, what exactly is happening? Is this a blown investigation? We now know these monsters sawed off Celeste's arms and legs. Let's not call it dismemberment. That word sounds clinical, like a surgeon removed her limbs. This is not what happened. A vicious, sick group of people brutally hacked her arms and legs off her body. Was she alive when they started? And yes, I am using plural terms because in my professional opinion, there is no way one person did this alone, whether participating directly or acting as an accessory. Yet only one individual is named as a target in the court filings. Like you, Neo Christopher Langston, you knew. I've seen family members publicly defend him and threaten lawsuits against anyone who names him. Sue me. I beg you, please sue me. Give me subpoena power. Give me the power of discovery because that may be the only way the truth comes out. Discovery is the exchange of information in any lawsuit. And sometimes that can be why people don't file a lawsuit because they don't want information being seen or shared. I beg if you file that defamation suit. How do people like David, Neo, and Asia live with themselves? 6 months, no charges, no press conference. But LAPD and the district attorney's office did issue a press release stating they had the medical examiner's autopsy and investigative findings sealed so detectives could review them first, claiming it was not meant to undermine transparency. They got that information, yet the records remained sealed. That press release misled the public. That press release was a lie. Another press release suggested the only potential criminal culpability might be concealment of a body. He's referring to earlier statements by the LAPD. They said that knowing Celeste's arms and legs had been sawed off, you came out with that press release knowing what had been done to her? If they do not have enough evidence to charge those responsible, then they need to say that plainly. Admit that after nearly 6 months, the investigation has not produced sufficient evidence to charge David Anthony Burke or anyone else who participated or was an accessory. Admit it's a blown investigation. Admit that important evidence was left behind after the search warrant. Admit that critical surveillance was lost because nobody followed up to obtain it. Celeste's head and torso were placed in one cadaver bag. Her arms and legs were placed in another. Someone purchased cadaver bag, cut her apart, placed her remains inside those bags, put her in the trunk of a Tesla, and went on with their lives. They purchased cadaver bags. They went to the extent of purchasing cadaver bags. And still, 6 months later, there were no charges, no accountability, silence, sealed records. Threaten me with contempt all you want. I will proudly take that contempt charge in the pursuit of justice for Celeste Rivas-Hernandez. 6 months is enough. Do your sworn duty or admit the case was failed. We need to let the LAPD and the DA's office know we are mad and this is not acceptable, and I wish her family would do the same. Here is the full 151-page court filing for anyone willing to read it. David Celeste Rivas-Hernandez. Now, that seemed to be in reference to, he had said this previously, that it seemed the DA's office was going to come after him for speaking publicly about the case, considering he may have testified in front of the grand jury. But to give you an idea, by the way, another idea of Neo and his supposed connection to all of this, last month, Steve Fisher posted this too. 4 photos, okay, including 1 or 2 that appear to be of Neo. And it says, on December 31st, 2024, at around 10 p.m., several people were at David's house. Although Celeste Rivas-Hernandez is not clearly visible in any of the photos from that evening, we believe she was present. The iPhone she had previously been pictured with appears to match the phone and case seen on the table along with a Hello Kitty mug. Another photo, which appears to have been taken by David, shows what are likely Celeste's fingers on a bottle. The phone that is likely Celeste appears to be on the Wi-Fi settings screen and connected to the Wi-Fi network. Even though iPhones use a private Wi-Fi address feature, the address remains fixed for a specific network, meaning it stays the same each time that device reconnects to that router. Hopefully, law enforcement investigators have reviewed the router logs to determine exactly when Celeste's phone and everyone else's phones were connected to the home's Wi-Fi network and compared that information against the statements each person provided about when they were at the house and who else was there, including Celeste. For example, if individuals in the photos, including these photos and many others, claim they did not see Celeste or were not at the house, yet the router logs show their phone was connected to the Wi-Fi, that would raise serious questions. We cannot forget about Celeste or the justice she deserves. It has now been more than 5 months and no charges have been filed. The last photo of Celeste is not from that night. It's from another time and meant to show her phone to compare with the phone on the table. Now, again, I'm doing all of this to put into context Neo's latest statement, okay? And with that in mind, I just want to show you one more thing. I also had a chance to speak previously with former prosecutor, LA attorney Nima Rahmani, who knows this court system well, talked to him about what Neo maybe testified to in front of the grand jury. And he believes that he did testify in front of the grand jury. Here's what Nima had to say.
In LA and at the district attorney's office here, they rarely proceed by grand jury. So grand juries are used in the federal system. They're used in most states back east. Here in LA, they almost always proceed by a complaint and a preliminary hearing. So the fact that we have a grand jury in this case is unusual. Now, obviously, Celeste has been presumed and found dead since at least September, and obviously she was missing for many, many months before that. So the question is, why is the DA's office using a grand jury in this case and not just charging David or other co-conspirators? And they're using the grand jury for an investigative function, and that investigative function is to lock down witnesses like Langston. They're going to plead, they're going to plead. But ideally, in a case like this, where you have an individual who's the target of your investigation, David, and he's surrounded by an entourage, and members of that entourage probably don't want to cooperate or rat or snitch, whatever you want to call it. The DA, Silverman's trying to use this grand jury to lock in their testimony. So when they go to trial, they can't go sideways.
Basically, if they take the stand, this is not what you said in front of the grand jury. You told the grand jury X, Y, and Z, way to hold them to their feet to the fire. If he really testified only for 30 to 40 minutes, okay, does that make sense for a grand jury witness?
No, usually in a murder case, you're going to expect much more testimony than that. And obviously, look, we know the grand jury can move quickly. There's no defense attorney, so there's really no objections, and things tend to move much faster because there's no ruling on those objections. There's no cross-examination. But obviously, if he's going to be a key witness in a murder case, you would expect more than 30 to 40 minutes of testimony.
Explain what you mean by that. So invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination,
Yes.
and why would he do that, and what would that look like?
So if he were to invoke before the grand jury, that would probably be a much faster series of questions and answers. Obviously, he would give his name, some identifying information, but anything related to the disappearance of Celeste Rivas would be met with, I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege. And after that assertion several times, that testimony is going to be over, absent some immunity, which we can talk about. I don't necessarily think that they would have given him an immunity, because if they did, again, I would expect the testimony to be much, much longer. So I don't know if he wasn't cooperative. I don't know if we went through him invoking. Frankly, I don't know if he's represented, if he was arrested and didn't surrender. So there's a lot of unknown questions. But typically, like you said, you'd expect to hear more testimony than that, or something shorter if he was just going to invoke.
I want to peel that back a little bit for a second. So first of all, if he did that and he invoked his fifth, can the grand jury use that against anybody they may be looking at charges for? Is that something they're allowed to consider?
Legally, no. If someone asserts their Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, their right to remain silent can't be used against them, can't be used against anyone else. That's a constitutional right. Now, practically speaking, do grand jurors and trial jurors implicitly say, hey, well, this person invoked, they must be guilty? Maybe, but certainly the law is that they're not supposed to do that.
Let me ask you another question. Have you ever seen a case before where the target of an investigation, a potential defendant in an investigation, has testified and in front of a grand jury, and the grand jury ends up indicting that person? Because I always thought, and I've been part of a grand jury before, it's usually the lead case agent, the lead detective, the victim. It's not the whole case. It's not the whole, everything that's presented during a trial, but it's enough evidence to support probable cause. And then the grand jury comes back and you need a majority to say there's probable cause for an indictment. Have you ever seen a case where, let's say he testified, whatever he testified to, if he testified, whether he invoked the fifth or not, and they might return an indictment against him?
I have seen cases where someone's testified before the grand jury, and because they've lied, they've been prosecuted. But usually the target is not someone that you call into the grand jury, because they're the target of the investigation, right? That's the person that you're trying to indict. Now, there have been instances where it's in a questionable case and the target has wanted to testify and try to explain away their case to the grand jurors, and I haven't allowed that. But typically, there's two types of people you do not put in front of the grand jury: your defendant that you anticipate indicting, or your star witnesses. And the reason you don't put your star witnesses is you're potentially creating impeachment material that can be used against them at trial.
All right, so let's see where this goes next. Interesting development, to say the least. But that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live. I'll see you next time, everybody. don't wait. Click the link in the description. Start browsing safely with CyberGhost VPN. Stay private, stay secure, unlock global content. Get CyberGhost VPN now with 84% off plus 4 months free, risk-free with a 45-day money-back guarantee. Click the link in the description and start protecting your digital life today.